I'm going to ask my panelists to come out today. I've got Senator Scott Martin, the one, the only. Come on in. I've got Leader Jesse Topper, two phenomenal people who I had the privilege of serving alongside in some capacity or another. Have a seat, gentlemen. How are we doing?
Doing great.
Good to see you both. Yeah, good to be here with you. So both of these men, by the way, have been incredible leaders on education. Leader Topper's been doing it for so long, and so has Scott Martin. In fact, when I was in the House and I introduced a bill that would give parents a heads up on what their kids were going to be learning in school. Because a lot of parents, they go into the school year, they have no idea what they're going to teach their kids. So I was like, hey, I think parents should know. Scott Martin over there helped us get that across the goal line in the Senate. So it's just tremendous, two gentlemen here. So I'm going to pick your brains today and get some thoughts on a number of things. We're going to dive into a discussion examining Governor Shapiro's record. All right? It's illustrious, I know. It's going to be interesting. And by the way, Representative Topper here, he serves as the House Republican leader, and Senator Scott Martin chairs the Senate Appropriations Committee. So they're two of the voices that are in the room on the most consequential conversations that happen. So, guys, Governor Shapiro has made Get Stuff Done. He doesn't say it like that, but GSD, the official slogan of his administration. But when you look at the record, there's this kind of growing gap between his rhetoric and Shapiro's real results. So in 2022, he outlined bipartisan priorities: expanding educational opportunities, advancing tax relief, delivering meaningful permitting reform, yet those commitments are unfulfilled as of yet. He's also pledged to work alongside the aisle to deliver results, but our analysis at Commonwealth Foundation actually shows he's been the least legislatively productive governor Pennsylvania's ever had in the last 50 years. Get that, 50 years. This guy's the least productive. So today we're going to focus on a fact-based investigation of the governor's first 3 years in office. So let's jump in. I'm going to start with Leader Topper. Let's start with what was supposed to be kind of this bipartisan breakthrough where when Governor Shapiro came into office, he signaled support for Lifeline Scholarships, which was a scholarship program that would help kids have a lifeline and get out of failing schools. He highlighted this as a campaign commitment, and it was negotiated as part of a budget agreement, which you both were there. But he ultimately, when you got it across the aisle, you sent it to his desk, he betrayed his people, his constituents. He ultimately line item vetoed. From your perspective, how did that decision affect trust and the working relationship between the administration and the legislature?
Well, I think you're still seeing the effects of it today. Some of that trust that has been lost through decisions like that one to line item veto something that was agreed to, that the Senate leadership agreed to, that the administration agreed to, but who didn't agree to it was the House Democratic majority. And I think it was at that moment that we realized who was really in charge when it came to public policy in Pennsylvania. We've seen it. I heard you mention it earlier about Virginia. You know, you can campaign as a moderate, but when you get in and try and govern to your left, you find that that's where you really are. And I think we found that out certainly with the House Democratic majority and also the pull that had with the governor. I also think that when it came to something like this school choice program, which would have absolutely been the most beneficial school choice program we've ever had in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. But you could see that not only did he pull to the left in Pennsylvania, we believe that we have seen decisions like that to pull to the left to basically court primary constituencies in New Hampshire, in Iowa, in South Carolina. And we believe that that's one of the things that not just broke down those negotiations, but have had a part in negotiations moving forward.
And that leads to my next question, and this one's for Senator Martin. How does that kind of breakdown on one issue affect negotiations on other major issues?
Well, first and foremost, whenever you have a betrayal like that in the 11th hour, especially in that first year, I don't think, even though that may have been in maybe the beginning of July, it took months to actually recoup and get people back together because of that lack of trust. And I think it also carried over into subsequent budgets. Since he's been in, if he's in the building to even negotiate the budget, it's been very difficult to really rally support, because when people feel like, well, is he just going to blue line an item again and line item veto it? And then you have the whole side of it, what people don't see on the surface. We all hear about the big battles. Did EITC increase, or did he pass school choice? But what you don't see is what's going on behind the scenes, because every bit of those programs that participate in the EITC, they have to sign contracts with different state agencies, and they try to implement in order to get their money or participate put other social related things that impact a lot of our schools for choice that really scares them off to want to do it. So, you know, there's a lot to be hesitant with this governor, but I think as we all have learned, he talks a very big game outside. But when it comes inside, it's a whole different ballgame.
You know, there seems to be a reluctance to hold him accountable amongst the press. There's a key issue I want to ask you about, Senator Martin, and that's about welfare and benefit programs. So I know that nationally we've seen stories about welfare fraud and all the fraud, waste, and abuse. What has the administration done in this area, and what remains unaddressed?
Well, the biggest thing they've done is because of they not making reforms necessary to make sure that the folks who are receiving benefits are truly qualifying to receive those benefits. They've expanded what their use was. And I'm just going to give you a wild idea. Everyone's heard of things like Ozempic, right? Well, this is a backward system between the federal and state government. They actually can approve new things to cover, and then we have to pass a law to actually stop it. So when they expanded things like Ozempic, or when they want to put money into paying rent for inmates coming out of prison and buy them furniture, all real things they want to do. It's called an 1115 waiver. The taxpayers are left to pick up the bill because obviously knowing that us passing a bill to stop it, what we're up against with the House Democratic majority and what we're up against the administration. So the Trump administration has kind of forced their hand with some of these work requirements, putting in accountability for error rates and things like SNAP and other things. And these are some of the largest programs that impact our budget. And so they're going to have to be implemented. They're going to have to be able to improve those error rates, which I think, unless we get it below 10%, we're going to have to pay a higher administrative cost. Right now, Pennsylvania was closer to 17% the last time I checked, with false claims going out the door. So a lot of moving parts on something that absolutely impacts our budget bigger than anything else.
17% fraud is a massive, massive number. That's a staggering amount of money. Leader Topper, in terms of things the governor should be getting done but hasn't, we're going back to education. Where do you see the gap most? So, and for those that you don't know, Jesse's been just a educational workhorse for a long time. You've been working on the education committee, doing a lot of things on education. What would you say the gaps are right now?
First of all, when Andrew got to the House, I then became not the only homeschooled graduate to be serving in the House because I was joined by Andrew. So I'm a product of school choice, you know, and my mom, who was a stay-at-home mom, my dad was a public school teacher for many years and then went on to teach at a community college. They decided that for me, the best form of education was what they could provide. And so I like to say, you know, I was homeschooled before homeschooling was cool. But at the time, my dad, particularly being a public educator, caught a lot of grief for it. But they believed that that was the best for my education. And I think part of our job as legislators, in fact, really our entire job when it comes to education, we can't ensure that every student will succeed. There are so many things that circumstances prevent that. Our job as public policy makers is to ensure that every student has the opportunity to succeed. And if we're not doing that, then we're failing. And I think that's where you can hear the governor's rhetoric on that versus the action, and you can see that we're failing. Because there are still students who are trapped inside failing schools. There are students who are in very good schools, but they themselves simply don't function well in that environment. So they shouldn't be forced to go to school in a place where they can't learn, regardless of whether it's a high-performing school or not. If the student isn't high-performing, then we're missing that opportunity to get them into a program that they should be. We still have so far that we can go on that. I think we have attempted to work across the aisle on these issues, something specific like the career and tech waiting list. You know, we have over 17,000 public school students that aren't able to get into the program that they want or that they desire for their education because the facilities aren't there. And yet we continue to pour money into a formula that quite simply isn't working. If that money could be used to clear that waiting list, we would have more success when it comes to education in Pennsylvania, and those students would be ready for a workforce on day one.
That's fantastic. No, it's a great point. Senator Martin, I'm going to ask you in a second about spending and what concerns you most and how to get that under control. But before I do, I'll just dovetail for a second. he talked about homeschoolers. He's correct. So I was the second homeschooler to join the House, but then a third homeschooler, Representative Rowe, who I think is somewhere in the building, came to the House. And there was a night in December that Rowe and I made a video, and we found out there were pianos in the Capitol, because a prerequisite for homeschooling is you have to learn how to play piano, apparently. So we played some piano in the Capitol, and then Jesse texted and said, hey, I want to play in the next one. I said, well, how good are you? He's like, I'm better than both of you combined. He's really good at piano. So I was like, there's no way we're letting this guy outshine us, but he's a fantastic pianist as well. So Senator Martin, let's talk about spending. What concerns you the most with the current trajectory? You've seen the governor's proposal. How do we get it under control and protect taxpayers?
So, I mean, it was a concerted effort by House and Senate Republicans going back under Tom Wolf to really start fighting to stabilize the Commonwealth's finances. And, we did that. We went from one of the worst states in the country in terms of not having any money in reserve to being in the middle of the pack, which has led to other good things: bond upgrades, positive outlook, saving money on debt, things that the governor likes to take credit for, by the way. But here's the reality of it. Pennsylvania is seeing a massive demographic shift go on. 80 and above and 65 and above are our two fastest age demographics. And meanwhile, what we're seeing is our K through 12 age, all inclusive, private and public, going down consistently in what we're graduating. Just from last year to this year, there's 17,000 less kids coming out of that pipeline. That's our future workforce. That's our future tax base. And so what really concerns me is we're not seeing the rate of growth that we need to see in terms of revenues and otherwise of a growing economy. And when you compound that with the bigger problem, which is the rate of growth of spending far exceeding your rate of growth in your revenues, what you see is a quick erosion of any fund balances that you have. He wants to go into the rainy day fund, and there'll be a complete negative ripple effect that comes with that. But still, as we have fought to turn Pennsylvania's ship around to be more competitive, to really attract, to grow, until we can have that propulsion of some other things that we need to get done to rein in that gap between spending and revenue, it's not a good formula that we're going to. So to see him come out and want to increase spending by another $2.7 billion, another 5.4%, knowing it, and he'll tell you, well, I am proposing revenues. I'm giving you weed. Don't use cannabis. I'm giving you gains of skill. Folks, that is a dimple on a golf ball in terms of revenue on two controversial subjects that don't even exist yet. So what we're basically looking at is potential complete exhaustion of the rainy day fund. And mark my words, when that happens, the following year, there's only 3 ways you can close that. And that's massive tax increases, massive spending cuts, or a combination of both. And what happens in 2026 electorally is going to play a huge role in shaping what direction Pennsylvania is going to go.
Wow, it's a little scary thought sometimes of this massive spending increase and what it would result in terms of taxes. That's crazy.
Right. Look, as Senator Martin says, there's only one answer if you don't improve the economy. Now, if you improve the economy, then that's a different ballgame. But that's what we have to fight all the time, which is we have an administration that wants to spend the money, and you'll see that even in the proposal of the House Democrats coming up. No real way to spend to talk about how to pay for it. But we have said that until you grow the economy, even if you didn't increase the budget a dime, we would be eventually in deficit spending. So not even taking the spending increase into account of the last couple budgets or the proposal for this one, we need to have our economy grow. And if we don't get, particularly in our energy space, in our energy sector, if we don't get these jobs back in Pennsylvania, back from Ohio, back from West Virginia, back from the Carolinas, considering our demographic trend, we simply won't have the buckets to catch the tax increases that'll come.
It's a great point about economic growth. And you talked about energy, and I actually wanted to ask you, Jesse, the energy environment in Pennsylvania. So we have a natural advantage. From your perspective, how has the current regulatory and permitting environment affected that opportunity? What do we need to do there?
We haven't seen a new natural gas generation build since Governor Wolf unilaterally tried to take us into the regional greenhouse gas initiative known as RGGI. When the governor ran the first time, he said he wanted to get us out of that. He got in, he continued the lawsuit to keep us in it. I think it was one of the major victories of the Republican legislature to force him in the last budget to finally end this nonsense and take away the specter of RGGI over our energy industry. We are already going to see companies willing to come back and invest in Pennsylvania because the certainty of that being gone is now a reality in Pennsylvania. But we had to force that issue. And that was certainly not something that the governor wanted to do. It was certainly not anything that our Democratic colleagues in the House or Senate wanted to do. But that in and of itself, just the idea that that was out there and the uncertainty in the market and the uncertainty that continues to be there when he proposes essentially Reggie Light at the state level and these energy taxes. This is not something that will bring growth to Pennsylvania. It will not be something that incentivizes companies, again, to come back from Ohio, West Virginia, where they are building natural gas generation, back to a place where you can have all the natural gas you want.
Yeah. Hey, real quick on this, such a critical issue because what's happened because the investment has been scared away because of the threat of Reggie, we're not adding baseload capacity. Coal, gas, nuclear, the clear backbone of a society in order to operate. You know, we now have an energy deficit that we're faced with, meaning that, you know, we get the alerts when there's warnings of rolling blackouts. Pennsylvania, one of the top electricity producers in the entire country. And so if you notice, talk about not getting stuff done, what he did was set the stage for increased pricing. And what he did was set the stage for not having enough of that infrastructure built. And what did he do instead? He turned around, him and some of his other blue state governors attacking PJM, the grid operator, when it's really government's policies and the stage that they set that's impacted this.
Like the dog ate my homework, basically.
The dog ate your homework. But talk about an issue that is so central. Reliable, affordable energy is a place people want to be. Businesses, especially manufacturers, want to be at, and it's so critical to our success that we get it right.
When people start flipping switches and lights don't come on, it's going to be an awakening to everyone over what we have been crying for the last couple of years as a warning to say we need to fix this, both from an economic standpoint, but also from a security standpoint, also from a reliability standpoint. And we need to continue to push that forward in every way that we can.
And when the grid failed 3 years ago in Texas, guess what? Sadly, people die.
Yeah.
It's a serious thing.
It really is. And when you look at what the governor's proposing, which is increase in the alternative energy portfolio standards, increase the mandate for wind and solar to 30+%. What you've done is you've made the Pennsylvania grid reliant on unreliable energy sources. In Spain last year, there was a complete national blackout because they rely now on solar energy. We never want to trust Pennsylvania weather to the sun. You don't want to do it, right? You need reliable energy. I want to ask both of you the same question, and that's about transparency in this administration. As you know, there's been well-documented concerns with transparency in the Shapiro administration and the use of taxpayer resources. From your perspective, and I know Senator Martin specifically, you've been in county government, you've been at multiple levels of government. What role does transparency play in effective governance, and how should the legislature respond when these concerns with the Shapiro administration surface?
Listen, everyone in this room can agree. I mean, government that operates in the dark and doesn't tell its citizens what it's doing is not a true representative form of government. You have to know what people are doing. And time again, what we find ourselves having to do to go to extreme lengths to get information. I'll tell you, we're embroiled in one right now, and I'm sure you heard of it, and that's related to transit funding. You know, here we have the motor license fund where all your gas taxes go. We want to know why it's sitting on $3 billion, right? When we talk about the public transit trust fund, transportation trust fund that funds transit agencies, as they claim that they need $300 million more dollars a year, well, why can't you explain to us or show us why there's $2.5 billion sitting in that account? And this has been going on for over 6 months. You know, and getting this kind of transparency so we can make appropriate decisions on our level has just been maddening and has been, quite frankly, in all my times, and this is my 10th year on the Appropriations Committee, I've never found it this difficult to get information.
And that has to change. This governor certainly is not camera shy. We know that, but at times he can be document shy in terms of turning over what we need to make these informed decisions when it comes to public policy, when it comes to tracking your tax dollars.
How do you counter the current budget proposal? So I know both of you have worked tirelessly, last year, on making sure we have some type of a fiscally responsible budget. What kind of efforts are underway this year? Any sneak peek you can give us on what's going on and how to counter this moving forward?
Well, first off, people need to understand that the budget process has been going on for a while. And they go line by line, look at what's coming into every single line item, what's being expended, and try to set things to the side saying, okay, we agree to this or we don't agree to that. At the end of the day, though, what it comes down to is, do we have what number of votes do you have in order to get a budget done? What kind of wins, especially given the dynamic? I cannot wait to someday be able to say Majority Leader Topper in the House, because quite frankly, the last few years has felt like we're holding two separate major boulders uphill on these asks, and they're not even always in agreement. You can't negotiate with one party and they're not even in sync with their same party, and then things all of a sudden fall apart. And it's very maddening to negotiate that way. To be able to lock arms with another majority across the building, I think would make this process smoother. But unless there's clear things, like you talk about the wins on permitting reform, on getting Reggie into statutory language that we're permanently out of that, and expanding school choice, unless there's wins that we're able to get, then you see deadlock. And you saw deadlock last year. And of course, until people start giving on some of these areas, it's tough to pull our caucus together. I'm sure the same with Jesse, in order to actually pass a budget.
Because of the dynamics that Senator Martin just mentioned with the House Democrat majority and a Democratic governor, we know that the budgets are going to spend more than we want. We know that. So what do we have to do? We have to try and get policy in those budget-related bills that grow the economy so we can start turning things around until we can hopefully get that majority in the House, until we can hopefully get an administration that realizes the fiscal impact of what they're doing with the budget. So until that time, you look for any opportunity you can to get wins that save kids, save students, and also get our economy back on track.
Well said, well said. Well, as we wrap up here, I want to ask both of you to tell me what you're optimistic about. So when you look at Pennsylvania, you look at our potential, you look at our progress. We understand there's the threats out there on the horizon, but when you look at all that we can and have achieved, and specifically what you're focused on, even in the environment we find ourselves in. So we've got this divided government, we've got a lot of hostile forces out there. What are you most optimistic about, and what are you focused on, and what's your kind of closing message here to the Pennsylvanians watching?
Well, I'm optimistic that the Pirates might make the playoffs this year, so that's thanks to Mustard folks. No, look, I am optimistic about a lot of things, but I'll focus on two. One, I am optimistic about our energy industry because I do believe we have beneath our feet, and as Senator Martin mentioned, in so many ways, through nuclear, through natural gas, through coal, we have the ability to not just grow Pennsylvania's economy, but also provide reliable energy throughout the entire United States. And I believe if we get the pipeline infrastructure, the world. So I'm optimistic about that. And I am optimistic about the future of education in this Commonwealth because I believe the tide is starting to turn. People are starting to realize across all parts, including blue areas of Pennsylvania, that our students need an opportunity to succeed regardless of the zip code of which they are born into. And the more that takes hold with parents, the better it will be for our students. So I'm optimistic in both of those areas.
Wow, that's fantastic. Senator?
Except for that Pirates comment. I'm a Phillies guy.
I knew you'd like that.
Listen, I'm just going to be really straight with you. This state has so much amazing opportunity. And the roadmap of what it's going to take to clearly fix Pennsylvania and unleash its potential, it's there. We know what we need to do. What we need is to make sure that we put the right pieces in place to grow this state and to make policy decisions to really give it some propulsion forward. You know, there's many topics we didn't talk here tonight, one of which him and I worked on directly together on how we keep our young people here in this state. How do we keep other states' young people in our state? Through the Grow PA program. If you're a grandparent or parent and you have a child that wants to get a great job in a high demand field, and you want to know what? We got that through unanimously through both chambers of the legislature. Why? Because it's that critically important. So we got to keep putting forth great candidates who can win, who can connect with people, who can deliver majorities back to the Senate Republican caucus and the House Republican caucus in order to stand firm, hopefully, with a Republican governor, which would be just amazing for us to finally fix what needs to be fixed in this state. Because I know this, Andrew, You know, and Jesse knows this as well. The sheer, as you watch what's going on in Virginia, and you see the things that drive us nuts about New York or about California, make no mistake about it. Those ideas have passed the House Democratic majority on party lines. And you know where they're sitting? They're sitting in the graveyard of the Senate Appropriations Committee and the Senate Rules Committee. And if we don't have electoral success, all those crazy ideas that would really further have this state go downhill would become a reality. But I'm optimistic that the people of Pennsylvania don't want that.
Yeah, let's hear it. Let's hear it for that. That's fantastic. Well, gentlemen, I'm so grateful for all you're doing in the legislature to advance freedom in Pennsylvania, to defend freedom. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention there's a couple of others who, Representative Tom Jones is back there. I see Tom, who's done great things. There he is. Good, good. I saw Representative Fink was out there earlier. And we've got a couple other legislators in the room and in the building. So I want to thank each of you that have been working on these issues for doing what you do. It's not easy, but you do it anyway, and we're grateful. Let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you guys.